Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to talk about every single dungeon in the entire game in terms of what are the most important debuffs to have on your team to use against the waves and then against the bosses. So some of this might be very common knowledge, some of this you might not have given a lot of thought to. So let's go ahead and make sure we cover all the bases for you guys so you can have the utmost success in all of your dungeons inside the game. So, I want to ask you guys, by the way, what do you find the trickiest dungeon inside the entire game? Obviously, it's Faction Wars Stage 21, but you know, how many of us are even at the point where that's a challenge for us, that's even at that point in the game? But other than that, I personally believe that the most challenging stage, I don't know, man. I think that, I guess it would be, a lot of people think that Dragon's Lair is the easiest, and then a lot of people say Ice Golem, then Spiders, then Fire Knight, but if you have the pieces, the correct champions, I guess that it's all dependent on that, right? Because Fire Knight is not too bad if you have the right team in place of a bunch of multi-hitters or the turn meter that you need to progress. So I think that each dungeon has its challenges, but all in all, I don't put one any more difficult than the other. Just again, depends on the champions that you have. But let's go ahead and just start with Fire Knight. So against the Fire Knight, the most important debuff is going to be, most importantly, for the waves, for the minions, to get by them, turn meter is great. Turn meter is great in all of Fire Knight. Turn meter manipulation, Fire Knight, Ice Golem, and Spider all can be turn meter manipulated. So champions that say decrease the enemy's turn meter by 10%, by 20%, by 100%, right? The holy grail of turn meter manipulation. That's why a champion like Coldheart is so valuable in both Spiders and Fire Knight, right? And she has the multi-hitter on the A1. So we're looking for multi-hitters on the A1 in Fire Knight. We're looking for turn meter depletion. Any champions like Lysandra, like Coldheart, like Executioner, anything along those lines is going to be really, really beneficial in terms of turn meter. Because once you get that shield down, Allure, right? Once you get that shield down, you want to ideally keep that shield down, okay? Man-Eater's another one. So the other important debuffs are going to be pretty obvious, right? Some CC ability on the waves, so some AoE freeze if you have it, some AoE stun, or putting a champion like Bellower in stun gear to tackle Fire Knight is going to be very, very important for the waves, getting through those first two waves of minions, and then on to the main Fire Knight. Just keep in mind, he cannot be debuffed with your decreased defense and your weaken until that shield is down. So against the actual boss, it's more about getting that shield down and then getting turn meter against the boss, the Fire Knight, versus necessarily getting those debuffs to land every time, because it will be very RNG based if you're struggling to get that shield down. So I would focus first on the multi-hitters, on the turn meter, and of course on the decreased defense, the CC for the waves for Fire Knight's castle. Moving on, we have, let's go to Spider first. So Spider, decreased defense, very, very important against the Spider. Weaken is great against the Spider as well, giving way more damage. Enemies that do damage based on enemy max, or excuse me, champions that do damage based on enemy max HP are great against all bosses, especially the Spider. You start out against the boss, there are no waves of minions. However, you do have to have the strategy to deal with all those Spiderlings. So a lot of people keep the Spiderlings stunned, so having a stun ability is going to be very beneficial to keep them from taking their turns and going after your DPS units on your team. And of course, turn meter manipulation again is crucial. That's going to stop that Spider from going and healing herself up, okay? Now, beyond that, again, turn meter we talked about, heal reduction works against the Spider, and of course, most importantly, decreased speed, decreased defense, and weaken, all on the Spider are going to be your main debuffs that you're looking for. Next up is going to be Dragon's Lair. So Dragon's Lair, the dragon is actually not susceptible to turn meter manipulation. So you can't use those turn meter champions against the actual dragon, but the dragon has a lot of HP. So putting poisons, I didn't even mention poisons and specifically HP burn against the Spider. My bad on that. A lot of people combine stun with HP burn, keeping those Spiderlings alive and having all of that damage tick off the Spider. My bad. back to the dragon. Dragon has a lot of HP, so it's all about poison. Once you get to the dragon, getting a defense down, using a champion like War Maiden, helping with the minions and the dragon, putting a weaken on the dragon is beneficial. And of course, again, no speed, so don't worry about decreased speed or turn meter manipulation on the dragon. Rather, it's about stacking up those poisons and focusing on your survivability against the dragon. Okay, so poison really good against the dragon, poison really good against clan boss, which we'll talk about in just a second. Ice Golem's peak. Ice Golem is going to be, especially when you get to stage 20, towards the end game, right? It's going to be very important that you get past that second wave, and that is based on stun, CC, and either provoke sets, stun sets of artifacts, or having those abilities on your champion skills that you use. It's going to help you get through that second wave, or having a champion that has revival, because you might lose your damage dealers on the reflect damage, okay? Once you actually get to the Ice Golem himself, make sure that you're focusing on the left minion, or excuse me, the right minion. There's two minions. The one on the left does way more damage, but the one on the right gives a defense down. So you want to kill the right minion first of the actual Fire Knight, so you don't get that AoE defense down on your team, because that is going to hurt. Now the Fire Knight will ignore 50% of damage off of your champions for each one of his minions are still alive. So focus on the defense down first, that way you don't have that extra defense down compounding the issue, and then you can move into the regular strategy of, again, turn meter manipulation is going to be your best friend against the Ice Golem. Just really focusing on having that. Ice Golem can be tricky, right? Because he is using those AoE attacks every time he falls below a certain threshold of HP. So cancel revival is going to be very important against those minions. That way you don't have to deal with them and deal with the boss ignoring your defense, right? So ignoring potentially 100% of your champion's defense. So if you have a champion that has the champions killed or enemies killed by this champion cannot be revived, it's going to help you out, go a long way against those minions on Ice Golem. Of course, it's not necessary to have all of these debuffs on every single dungeon. These are just the best in my opinion. This is how I would kind of try to build a team, providing I had these abilities, these debuffers in my champion collection. Okay, and if you don't have them, these are things that you should be keeping an eye out for as you pull new champions in this game. Now let's go ahead and go through really quickly all of the different kind of keeps. Real quick, actually, let's do Clan Boss first, right? So Clan Boss, Arena, I mean, what am I going to say about Arena? Speed rules all, decreased defense, decreased turn meter, CC, freeze, all that stuff is good, right? Depends on who you're facing, really. Clan Boss is easy, right? Poison is really, really great against Clan Boss. What else are we looking for? Poison, HP burn is pretty good, but really the biggest debuff for the Clan Boss is decrease attack. He does a ton of damage as the fight progresses, so getting that decreased attack is going to help you out a ton. So decrease attack, decrease defense, and weaken are by far the three strongest debuffs for the Clan Boss. And of course, poison, right? Having at least one poisoner on your team is going to help you a lot. So poison, HP burn, but the big three: decrease attack, decrease defense, and weaken on the Clan Boss. You can get by without weaken, but it's nice to have both decrease defense and weaken. Also, poison sensitivity now is great on Clan Boss. Also, you know, we haven't talked about like kind of the newly buffed leech ability. It can be, if I don't mention, or heal reduction on Fire Knight as well, my bad on that. These abilities to me are kind of, they're nice. They're great against minions as well, especially Leech. Heal reduction is great against the Fire Knight. However, keep in mind that you can be, in my opinion, you can be just fine without heal reduction. Heal reduction for me personally isn't my favorite debuff in the game, just my own. I'd rather allocate that. If it came down to a champion who does more damage or has a little bit of CC in their kit versus a champion who had heal reduction, I don't feel like I need to have the heal reduction. However, of course, it does help you if you do have it. So going on to, we did Clan Boss. Let's go through all the other dungeons here, guys. So let's start with Magic Keep. So Magic Keep, oh, I don't want to open it. Magic Boss has a buff removal, has a defense up buff. So having someone who can remove that buff from the boss will help you out, or someone who can steal that buff. Otherwise, all of these dungeons, you know, they're pretty straightforward. You can beat any of these dungeons without having a specific niche champion, but helping for progression, having someone who can remove that increased defense is going to help you out there. Next up is Spirit Keep. Spirit Keep has a big heal on the boss, so you can go ahead and have somebody, again, with heal reduction that will help you out in Spirit Keep if you're having difficulty with progression. But most importantly for any of these keeps, if you're going against Spirit Keep, just kind of look at your affinities, right? Try to utilize as many magic champions as you can. And if you're going against, a magic keep, try to utilize force champions. Having that proper affinity matchup is going to help you obviously a lot in all of the keeps. Force Keep, having a defense down is going to help you out a lot. Like a War Maiden will be great for Force Keep, for example. Void Keep, having a block debuffs or a remove debuffs or a high resist on your team is going to help you out in Void Keep, because the boss there puts a lot of damage over time debuffs on your champion. So again, some sort of a cleanser or some sort of a block debuff is going to help you out a lot in Void Keep. And then in Faction Wars, the last place in the game, guys, Faction Wars, basically for every faction war, as you progress, it becomes more and more important, more paramount for success to have a lot of sustainability, a lot of turn meter manipulation, reduce the enemy's turn meter, especially against the minions, who are very, very difficult as you progress in Faction Wars. Faction Wars has gotten a number of different nerfs, but it's still very, very challenging. The most challenging area of the game are the high level stage like 18, 19, 20 of Faction Wars, and of course 21 of Faction Wars. Really difficult. Even if you have a team that's incredibly OP, if you're missing turn meter and crowd control ability, unless you have a bunch of shields and a bunch of, increased defense and debuff cleansers, it's going to be very challenging. So having someone who can strip buffs off of your enemies, especially facing all those Man-Eaters and Valkyries, it gets very challenging. So having a buff stripper would be great if you do have one on your account, like a Madame Ceres, but of course you need one for every faction, right? It's difficult. Having crowd control helps as well. So decrease turn meter, freeze, stun, those sort of abilities are going to be great as well. And of course having survivability, right? Having your champions all built to be defensive tanks, have high defense. Squishy champions do not do well in Faction Wars as you start to progress into the late game, so you might need to start re-equipping some of your champions, even your attack, even your damage dealers, with a more kind of robust artifact set on them. Shield sets do well as well inside all of the faction crypts, all of the Faction Wars abilities, areas in the game. For Arcane Keep, guys, it's pretty straightforward, but basically he has a increased defense, so if you have a debuff stripper, that's great, but he does more damage. How much does he do extra? He does 75% extra damage if your champions don't have a buff on them. So if you're having problems with, maybe you're stage 11 through 14, trying to get to stage 15 from Arcane Keep, just make sure you have a buff on all of your champions. So put a buffer or two on your team. Doesn't matter what the buff is, increased defense from like a marked champion, or increased speed from an apothecary will be great for you. So that will really help with survivability against the actual boss on Arcane Keep. And then against Minotaur's Labyrinth, he has this weird kind of mechanic where, again, he's pretty straightforward. Arcane and Minotaur's considered like pretty easy compared to the other stages that we talked about on the video so far, but the Minotaur has 3 turns of Rage, where he does 400% more damage, followed by 1 turn of Daze, where he does 200% less damage. So if you're having trouble with Minotaur's Labyrinth progression, consider having a decreased speed, decreased turn meter, something to get him kind of stuck and take longer during the Daze phase, and make sure that you have the champions to kill him quickly in the Enraged stage, or having those big heals up early on when he's doing 400% extra damage. That increase up will help you a lot as well if you're struggling in Minotaur's Labyrinth progression. So guys, that's going to do it for the video today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this content. I'll see you in tomorrow's video, and as always, take care, guys.